black control. What is that about?
Yeah, so Raf Levy is kind of playing a different take on kind of what's become the de facto tap out control deck of the format, which is kind of the Orzhov control deck, which looks to play out a bunch of cheap creatures and use kind of a mild sacrifice theme to kind of get ahead on cards and establish some card advantage. But instead, Raf choosing to go mono black here, and the big change that he made by going this route is he's choosing to play Concealing Curtains instead of something like an Eye Twitch. And this is to allow him to have a little bit of a better game against kind of the expected field, which is largely Izzet-based control decks. And Concealing Curtains, it serves as a fine blocker against the other creature strategies. However, it's not just a complete blank against control.
That's right. And it's actually, it turns into a 3/4 with Menace. Like, that thing's a real creature that you have to deal with. By the way, all 1-drops here for Raf on a Multisix. He's going to go Shambling Ghast into Curtains.
Yeah.
So he's got 3 creatures on the board, a very different look from his mono black control deck. But yeah, it becomes a 3/4 Menace, which can pressure Planeswalkers, mess with your... It's really strong, and that's why we see Thundering Rebuke send it to the bin.
Yeah, that being said, you still have to favor the pure control deck, right? You're looking at Sam Party's list. It's just got more card draw, right? These Shambling Ghast are typically really, really strong against other creature strategies. Shambling Ghast versus a mono-white aggro deck is just incredible. However, here, it's not even getting in for that much damage, which allows Sam to just really kind of sculpt out his hand, cast his, Memory Daily, just get ahead on cards and eventually slam the door shut with a card like Leer or the 2 copies of Hullbreaker Horde that he has in his deck.
Yeah, this matchup looks really tough from Raf's perspective, particularly in game 1, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, things change after sideboard because, as they often do, when you're playing these black-based control decks, almost always, game 1 against the blue-based control deck, you're almost always a dog. You just have less card draw, and you have a whole lot of removal spells that don't have a whole lot of targets. But after sideboard, once you can take away some of those removal spells and replace them with multiple copies of Duress, 4 copies of Skyclave Shade, all of a sudden, the matchup becomes a lot more even.
You can see Sam Party sculpting his hand here. He's got Frostbite, Unexpected Windfall, Leer, and Jwari Disruption at the ready. In the meantime, Raf deftly plays out his land before playing Sorin, so he doesn't get disrupted. He does know about that card in the hand of Sam Party. And you know what? That had to be one of his best draws, Paul. He actually gets to put something on the board that matters now.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorin the Mirthless, very, very powerful. But keep in mind, Sam is really close to flipping the Smoldering Egg. That's 5 counters. If he can play another 2-mana spell, that's going to turn into a 4/4, and that's Sorin the Mirthless. He should have a pretty easy time dealing with that's on the board.
Yeah, he can actually do it all here. I don't know if it's worth it to do so, but he can even cast Leer and Frostbite and Spikefield Hazard here if he really wants.
Yeah, excuse me. And Frostbite, of course, can target Planeswalkers as well. So he can go Spikefield Hazard on a Shambling Ghast, exile it, don't even give you the treasure, flip into Ashmouth Dragon, and kill Sorin. And now, Raf Levy's just got a 1/1.
Not sure I can watch much more of this, Paul, especially with Raf Levy having Skullport Merchant in hand, which is a card I really like. It's a cool card. It doesn't look like it's going to do anything here, though, against an Ashmouth Dragon. The best he can do is play the Skullport Merchant, sacrifice the Shambling Ghast, try to find some more mana, get himself up to a Meat Hook Massacre that could actually kill the dragon. It's going to take a lot to do that.
Oftentimes, because I mess around at least with the Orzhov variation of this deck. The moment I would just see my opponent play a Riverglide Pathway or a blue-red land, I really just wanted to go on to the next game. Game 1 just feels pretty close to hopeless, and then after sideboard, you do have a much, much better shot.
Sam's gonna... I never get used to it when you play Leer and then all of a sudden your hand becomes 10 cards or whatever. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, he's going to go for Frostbite plus a trigger from Ashmouth Dragon, and that's going to force the issue on the Merchant, where Raf's going to either have to sacrifice the treasure or the creature to make sure he gets a card back out of it and try to find some way forward. Raf does have numerous Wrath effects in his list, including the Meat Hook Massacre, which he now has enough mana to actually clear the board with it, right?
Yeah,
Even through Disruption?
he does have the Meat Hook Massacre, so curious to see what Sam's going to try to do here. Uh, of course, Raph does see that there is actually you don't even need to play around Jwari Disruption, of course, given that Lear's on the battlefield, as spells cannot be countered.
Our two players here are 3-1 coming in. There are still undefeated players in the field. There's 16 of them this round. By the end of the day, we'll narrow that down to 2 7-0s. But now these two are near the top of the standings and looking pretty good early.
If Sam can find a Fading Hope off this Consider to save this Lear, that would be huge.
Well, looks like that's what he's going to go for here. Also, just might as well get an extra couple of damage in. And it's going to be a land, so now he's going to go for a little more damage. Well, how about a little lightning bolt here, Paul?
All right. Well, I mean, now we're at parity, right? You know, Sam just got some lands.
Kind of, actually, yeah. So this is this went from, you know, looking pretty bad here for Raph to okay, and Hullbreaker Horror, the number one draw for party up top of the library. And a snow-covered swamp.
Let's play the guess what emote Raph's going to use here game. I'm going to go with nice.
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 Nice. Good call. Paul, this is why you're here, man. You're the best.
I mean, this is the real reason to be here. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if we can get him really tilted, he might start spamming it, right? That's where it's like nice, not, you know, and then concede. Yeah. But it looks like he's good with just the one nice as Hullbreaker Horror comes in and smashes Raph down to just 6. And there's Sorin that actually, barring any spell drawn from party, would keep him alive.
Yeah, he can make a 2/3 token here, and just, you know, cross your fingers. Hope Sam has actual nothing.
Yeah, Hullbreaker has done good work. I was a little surprised to see it make such a dent in standard, but yeah, there are builds that prefer that as their top end out of Izzet. It's interesting.
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, it's an incredibly powerful card, but you're fighting. That slot is reserved also for another extremely powerful card in the format in Alrund's Epiphany, right? So you just kind of have to make that decision because realistically, you can't really play both.
This is. Oh, he went for it? Okay, never mind. So he decided to draw a card and fortunately hit a 5-drop, which is going to do 5 to him, and then he loses the game as a result. He did draw Lolth there, which is one of his more powerful cards and traditionally his game ender, his finisher. But as we see, the sweepers are going to be reduced in numbers significantly, as well as looks like Lolth as well. He doesn't want the expensive stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like he just wants to keep his deck as lean as possible here. And, you know, this allows him to kind of go underneath maybe some of the counter magic that he might expect. And, I mean, as you can see, the matchup gets a lot better for Raph here after sideboard, right? We're looking at 4 copies of Duress, 3 copies of Goblink, Skyclave Shade. I know Spikefield Hazard is a card, but it's still a really annoying threat to deal with. And not only that, even a card like Graveyard Trespasser, right? If you don't counter the Graveyard Trespasser, I mean, these decks don't play hard counters anymore. If you use a removal spell to get it, I mean, that's just a 2-for-1 right there because you have to discard a card to get it off the battlefield. Not only that, I mean, given that Sam's playing a Lear-based strategy, the exile effect on the Graveyard Trespasser is also very, very relevant.
Chat's having a bit of a discussion about the decision that Raph made there, Paul, between do you minus and try to find an answer for the Hullbreaker, you know, while the answer's good, or do you make the 2/3 and cross your fingers that Sam doesn't have a spell? How would you approach that type of decision? You know, it seemed that Raph was saying my best chance to actually win the game would be to go for the minus and find an answer.
So he only has 4 copies of Infernal Grasp that he could have drawn to kill the Hullbreaker Horror on the spot there. I think I think given just the numbers, you likely want to make a token there, and then on the following turn is when you want to maybe draw a card and try to find an answer, because once you have all your mana available to you, you can draw all kinds of different cards to get the Hullbreaker Horror off the battlefield.
And to be clear, each choice is very risky, right? Like neither is likely to win. Like if you make a token, it's really any spell for Sam and you're dead. Like literally, he just draws a castable spell and you die.
Do you see how Ref sideboarded, by the way?
Uh-uh.
15 cards.
All of them?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. And it looks like he wants to take a more aggressive line here. He's got Skyclave Shade in his opener here to go with Skullport Merchant. Not two cards you usually see next to each other, and a Duress.
Marshall, you know that thing that people used to do in tabletop, not to give anything away. A common thing people would do is shuffle their entire sideboard into their main deck, and then take out the 15 cards. Well, in this case, he literally needed all 15 cards.
He just needed all of them.
Yeah.
It's easier that way. All right, Skyclave Shade on the battlefield. There's also Sorin, Faceless Haven, Skullport Merchant, and a Duress here for Raph. Down to 17 goes Sam after getting hit by the Shade, and here comes Skullport Merchant. But we're going to see Frostbite, and that's going to take care of the Shade, at least temporarily. Merchant's going to make a token. Another Frostbite off the top here for Sam. But his only real defense at this point is Divide by Zero. He's also got Test of Talents, but little unfortunate here for Sam. 2 copies of Hullbreaker Horror stuck in his hand.
Yeah, and that is sometimes the cost, right, of playing these really powerful spells. I mean, it still costs 7 mana. These are the types of creatures that you want to draw kind of towards the late game, but of course early on they're just going to kind of rot. Now, in this specific matchup, you often do get the time to just kind of find your lands, so it's not the end of the world. But certainly you're gonna see Sam trying to fire this Divide by Zero on basically anything to try to go get that Environmental Sciences, so he doesn't miss any land drops.
Yeah, is it just Environmental Sciences full stop? Because you can also discard, like, I don't know if the second Hullbreaker Horror is redundant or something, but oh, he's gonna go for Test of Talents here on a Duress to nab the other ones.
Yeah, I think that is an option that's available. The
But you
problem
wanna
with
guarantee it, right?
but the problem with doing that, I know it taps you out for the turn. Yeah, this is very
This is a
strong
good,
here.
really good turn from Raph. Yeah, he fires off a Duress to clear the way. It turns out the way was clear anyway, but now he can play Sorin. He pluses it, even hits a Swamp off the Bob trigger, so that's nice.
But the problem with getting Environmental Sciences is that puts you down a card relative to... The problem with looting puts you down a card relative to just putting Environmental Sciences in your hand, right? Because you're swapping out a card in your hand as opposed to just actually putting a card into your hand.
That makes sense. The downside to it, of course, is that having missed a land drop here, he has to wait till next turn to cast it, but certainly seems worth it given that at least currently Raph has a grand total of 1 power on the board. After Divide by Zero sent Sorin back into hand, Raph drew a Swamp for the turn to join the other Swamp he found off of Sorin last turn. But the way's clear for Sorin again. He can just jam it.
Yeah, one thing to note here is Raph definitely playing around this Frostbite here. Could have made a token, which is generally the thing that a lot of times you want to do with these Planeswalkers, make a token, then draw the card on the following turn. But mindful that Frostbite is a card that Sam has in his deck, and it's more important to make sure Sorin stays on the battlefield.
Ooh, look at this. Raph is going to take a different route with only red mana up for Sam Pardee. He knows he can resolve Sorin, and he's going to bypass that and fire up Faceless Haven.
Okay.
Wow. So this is a change of pace, change of direction here from Raph Levy. And he's even got enough mana to not only get back the Skyclave Shade, but also put it back on the battlefield.
No, I mean, this is nice. The thing is, Raph knows Sam's hand, right? He's got a slow hand. He's got double Hullbreaker Horror. So really just wants to maximize the pressure, because the longer this game goes, the higher the chance that Sam's going to be able to deploy the pair of Hullbreaker Horrors that he has in his hand. I mean, this is a 2-turn clock.
Raph's down to beat down. Meathook Massacre was the draw step. Boy, you know, sometimes when the cards line up for this mono black deck, you're like, wow, this is really good. But then sometimes they don't, right? And you have these odd pairings. Like right now he's got Skullport Merchant plus Skyclave Shade. Like what? Like you have a 1/4 and a 3/1? Like what's your game plan? And then, you know, he's got 2 creatures on the board and he draws the Meathook Massacre. And you're like, well, what?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. That's actually a really interesting card. It's something that you wouldn't normally expect to see against the pure control deck with very little creatures, right? Because it kind of acts as a sweeper. I wonder if Raph is looking at it more in the context of a burn spell, maybe, right? Where you just kind of have some creatures put it into play, and if Sam kills all your creatures, he takes a bunch of damage.
He's going to try to send another big chunk of damage over this time. 8 damage coming across. Party's really forced to use Frostbite here to take down the Faceless Haven.
And Sam's also got the Fading Hope here if he wants to prevent a little more damage. Note that Ref did play a land for this turn, so if Ref does choose to sacrifice the Faceless Haven to draw a card, Sam can choose to bounce the Skyclave Shade, and Ref can't replay it this turn, which will buy him some time.
Ref switches from the aggro plan to the grind you out plan. He did find an Infernal Grasp, a card that he would have loved to see before. But look at this. Fading Hope is going to send back.
This is so awkward.
And it's like, do you want the land? Because you've got 2 Hullbreaker Horrors, but
right.
I guess he figures he can do better, and he finds Divide by 0. He is at 12, Sam, and he's only facing down 1 power again from Raf Levy. I wonder if this aggro plan from Raf is going to hold up, or if he's going to regret not having just cast Sorin and started generating value a couple of
times ago. He could have found a lot of cards here. You know, Sam's going to go for the Divide by 0. Raf does have Skyclave Shave to follow up at, dealing with that Faceless Haven bottom a good amount of time here. And,
Ooh.
Wait, you don't want to do that. You're going to draw no cards.
Yeah.
You're going to sequencing, folks.
There we go. Get that one out of your hand. And also get the 3 counters on the egg as well. He did miss on his land this time, but now he's got Smoldering Egg to block the Shade. Here comes Sorin back on the battlefield. Is he just going to keep plussing? Yes, he is. And Raf's going to find another land. Fair enough.
And then he's going to kill the egg. And now Raf's looking great here. Sam really needed to find a land there to give himself a shot at playing those Hullbreaker Horrors. But at the same time, I mean, Raf's got the other Infernal Grasp in his hand.
Yeah, Sam's now off schedule for casting the Hullbreaker Horror as soon as possible. He needed a land drop last turn into 1 this time. He does have the ability to play the Smoldering Egg and maintain his life total, but again, that other Infernal Grasp could just snipe it, and then he's on life support.
And if you notice, Ref didn't play a land on that previous turn, and that's just to make sure that he has a landfall trigger in case Sam had a removal spell for the Skyclave Shade.
Makes sense. You know, his deck doesn't curve as highly as Sam's does, so that 7th land isn't critical to have down on the battlefield. Once again, Sorin's going to keep drawing cards. This time, well, it's another swamp.
Blood for knowledge, a fair trade.
And likely going to see just another removal effect here on the Smoldering Egg.
And I'll tell you what, Paul, there's a lot riding on that Memory Deluge. He's going to need to clean up quite a mess here, facing down Sorin on 6, plus 4 power on the battlefield at just 3 life.
Yeah, I actually wonder if it was worth a consideration to just make a token at that point on this turn, just because of how low Sam's life total is, right?
Yeah.
Just having that extra threat, and then maybe running out of a Meathook Massacre. So if Sam somehow has a sweeper still left in his deck, I mean, Sam would just die. He would go to 0.
Sam picked up the first game, but he's under serious pressure here from Raf Levy. And, you know, I got to say that damage that Raf did earlier in the game has certainly added up. He wasn't able to stay, you know, firmly on the all-attack game plan, but, you know, he got in for 5 and 7, and it's really added up. And here we go. He sees, oh, no. Memory, Deluge, Test of Talents, and lands. He's going to take a Deluge and lands. There's Expressive Iteration, which could perhaps give him something to hope for. Is he alive through this attack? Actually, he is.
No. Well,
he's not?
No, the thing is, he attacks with everything. Sam plays the Hullbreaker Horror, goes down to 1, and then Raf just casts a Meathook Massacre to kill all the creatures on the board, including his own. And whenever a creature he controls dies, Sam loses a life. Sam probably won't even expect Meathook Massacre, to be honest.
Yeah, especially not as the burn spell finisher here in game number 2. But that's exactly what's going to happen. And you can see Raf looks very calm, cool, and collected because he knows what's up. And Party doesn't have a choice. He must block the 3-1. And he's already starting to look over at his sideboard here. But
It's like, is he not playing the meat hook? I
I
assume
mean,
he
he
is.
can just run it out.
Okay. What?
Now
What?
he's going to do it.
Sure.
Raph's getting cute. I mean, he could even just do it for the 5, which would be plenty. And there we
Yeah.
go. That's the game number 2 going to Raphael Levy. He picks up the win, switching gears nicely with his mono black deck. He went from, more controlling start to a more beatdown mid game, and then kind of in the middle to finish things up. I mean, he won the game with a sweeper, and he was on the aggressive plan. Like,
yeah.
how the heck?
Again, that's really interesting sideboarding, because oftentimes that's not what you would expect a deck to want to do as the control player going up against a deck with no creatures. But again, the Meat Hook Massacre is more than just a sweeper, right?
Mhm.
Its static text is very, very relevant, and he's just using this as just a way to chip away at Sam's life total, because he knows if he gets to the really ultra late game, Sam likely has the edge here with the Lear and Hullbreaker Horrors.
By the way,
I still
looks
don't
like-
know why he needed to play the 3-1 out of the graveyard, but
Yeah, he went for extra credit there, Paul. And he got it.
yeah.
Okay, game number 3. Raph's 3-1, Sam's 3-1. They're both playing control decks with vastly different approaches to the whole control thing. The good news for us as viewers is that this is a post-board game, which means it's much closer. Raph Levy has a very difficult time in game 1 and did here as well. Nice little hand here, though, for Sam. He's got a Smoldering Egg, which is what you want to see on 2. He's going to lose an unexpected windfall, so the hand looks a little worse now. Ooh, how about a Divide by 0 to follow up? That's nice.
And one thing to note here is, if you just kind of look at the way these cards are lining up, I mean, this specific matchup, that is a control matchup, seems to be a better matchup for Raph than just the Epiphany deck, right? He just has a lot of the spot removal spells that can just deal with all the win conditions that Sam has. His hand is double Power Word Kill and Infernal Grasp. Those cards look a lot more embarrassing when your opponents are just playing an army of 1/1 flying tokens.
No, they don't look great here, though, do they, Paul? He's facing down a dragon. It's like,
Yeah, he's
Infernal
got the
Grasp?
Infernal Grasp. He's
Yeah.
got the Grasp.
he's grasping to it. Let's just say that. But he'll be happy to have Power Word Kill for the Lear and the Hullbreaker Horror that we see in hand here for Pardee. Things look lined up fairly well for Raph Levy.
Do you see what's happening here?
Mm-mm.
Sam's going to Frostbite his Smoldering Egg to cast Teachings of the Archaics to draw 3 cards instead of 2. Because by doing so, Raph will have 4 cards more than him.
He also
Additionally,
flips
this gets in for
the-
4.
Hatchy, here comes the Ashmouth Dragon. Oh, what a cute baby. And now you're down to 16, Raph. So, yeah, he's got his hands full for sure.
Yeah, and he had a little bit of fun with it at least. But
That was pretty cool. Yeah, Sam has to be still okay with this exchange. He got in for some damage. He forced Raphael Levy to react to him on Raph's turn, and that could open up the door here for Sam to play out a Lear if he wants. One line of play, Paul, that I'm interested to see is how does Sam want to approach this next turn? Because he can go like Smoldering Egg, leave Fading Hope up, or he could just go land Lear and just hope that it survives. But if he's patient, he may want to wait to get to 6 mana to cast Lear with Fading Hope available, right?
yeah, it's interesting. Typically, you want to play Lear and have protection up, especially when you're playing against a mono black deck with a lot of potentially spot removal spells. At the same time, now, given that Concealing Curtains is in play, that might change things up. However, keep in mind that Sam can respond to the cost and bounce the Concealing Curtains here.
Okay. Well, a little wrinkle here, Paul. It was a haul of Storm Giants off the top for Sam. He wanted to get his tap land in, and I think that broke the tie if there ever was one, and he's going to go for the Smoldering Egg and leave Fading Hope available here. The next turn, he knows he can go Lear plus Fading Hope if that's what he wants.
But yeah, so Sam
Yeah.
basically saw what's going to happen and just sequencing this, kind of beautifully here. Now he's going to have the Lear with the 1 mana up to cast Fading Hope to protect the Lear from a potential removal spell from Wrath Levy.
Yeah, Sam saw a mountain on top with the Scry. He actually considered keeping it so he could get up to Hullbreaker Horror mana, but then he said, you know what? I'm going to have so much action off of Lear, I'll be fine. Really
Yeah,
nice play here by Sam. All right, Curtains hits the battlefield again here for Levy, but there's land number 6. Lear, Disciple the Drown, hits the battlefield, and boom, 5 cards available now for Sam Party, including critically a Fading Hope.
Wow!
Go blank off the
was
top for
a draw.
Levy. Holy smokes!
That was insane. That's going to get the Hullbreaker Horror out of Sam's hand as well.
Wow, he's going to leave him with like nothing? I mean, I guess he still has his 2 creatures on board, but holy smoke.
I mean,
he can power word kill the Lear as well?
He can. So, I mean, if Sam is interested in keeping the Hullbreaker Horror, he might just Fading Hope the Smoldering Egg here in response to the Go Blank and discard Egg plus the Riverglide Pathway to save the Horror. But I mean, Wrath basically has an answer to all of these threats, right? You can power word kill the Lear, and then you can also kill the Horror. What a draw here from Wrath.
Yeah, and it looks like Sam was ready for this one too. Oh, it looks like he may actually just bounce the Curtains.
Wow.
So he wants to keep the Smoldering Egg on the battlefield here, Paul. He feels like he can draw a card off the top and you know, an unexpected windfall or something. Anything really, just to try to get that egg flipped and start bashing. What a rip though. Go blank here from Wrath Levy. And you're going to see a lot of cards. All those cards on the bottom part of the screen are going to be gone.
Yeah, and this is rough. Now, Sam, I mean, untapped land is not bad. You get in for 7, but of course, big spells would also be good. This Smoldering Egg is... I mean, Wrath currently doesn't have a way to kill this egg.
Spikefield Hazard was the draw. And he's just going to play it as a land and pass. So no go here for Sam Party.
Jeez.
It's 0-4 versus 0-4 in the feature match. Which one's going to do something first? You see Infernal Grasp off the top here for Levy. Man, he's snapping now. These are some really great draw steps for Wrath. Go blank into Infernal Grasp? Yes, please.
Yeah, so Wrath's got the Grasp here for the egg. He's got the Power Word Kill for the Hollow Storm Giants. He could potentially play. He can choose to maybe be a little bit patient to see if Sam chooses to activate the Hollow Storm Giants next turn, right? Because if he just goes for that activation, you can simply just go Power Word Kill, pay the word cost to get that Hollow Storm Giants off the battlefield, untap, kill the egg, and attack for 4 with the Faceless Haven on the following turn.
That's true, Paul. That might be the card that Wrath is going to focus on.
It is also tempting, of course, to just fire up a Faceless Haven and attack here as well. But, I mean, this is not necessarily the best trade in terms of damage, right? I mean, you're at 14. And the Hall of Storm Giants gets in for a lot here.
It sure does. Okay, Faceless Haven in. Now it's 16-14 in favor of Sam.
Huh. Yeah, this tells me that...
Is Wrath gonna bite the bullet?
Yeah, I mean, with this line, I feel like you're just kind of committed to just killing the egg here, right? I guess the other line would be to just run out of Skyclave Shade as well. Those are the two things that he'll be looking to do here before Sam untaps.
Yeah, I wonder if part of Wrath's plan...
Okay.
Never mind. I was going to say is just to chump with the Curtains, but it looks like he's going to go ahead and transform here just to get it. Oh, wow. That's one of the best draws here
huge.
for Party.
Oh, and a whiff!
He hits triple lands off of Expressive Iteration. He'll be happy to not have those off the top of his library,
right.
but he needed some action there. Up to 4 counters on the Smoldering Egg. It's getting close. There's Skullport Merchant now. Wrath can apply quite a bit of pressure, especially if he... Okay, he's just going to hit for the 3. Down to 13 goes Sam Party. Revealing Eye. Nice little creature. 3/4 menace is actually pretty tough to kill, and it gets through a lot. There's the Skullport Merchant now from Raph.
Yeah, certainly a higher impact card in this specific matchup than, again, the Eye Twitch that most other variations of this deck plays.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and there's the Shade. All right. Sam needs another good top deck, and unfortunately for him, there were 4 lands on top of his library in a row. And
Yeah,
that's
and
past the turn back.
And now Raph can potentially kill the egg this turn, maybe just choosing to save that treasure, but he could kill the egg and then also still have the removal spell for the Hall of Storm Giants.
Yeah, if you can just kill both things, that's not the worst. Although, is there a way to work a Faithless Haven activation in here?
It's tough because you won't be able. I don't.
You can do
Will he
one
have-
removal spell, I think that would.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if you can activate Faceless Haven attack, cast, and then have the removal spell still available to kill the Hall of Storm Giants.
Well, Raph's doing the math on that right now, so we'll find out shortly.
Might just be interested in attacking with the 3 creatures in play, force Sam to activate, then use the Power Word Kill here on the Hall of Storm Giants. The nice thing about this is he can actually kill both creatures, right? He can kill the Smoldering Egg and the Hall of Storm Giants to make it so that Sam can't somehow come back into this by finding an unexpected windfall into more gas and flipping that Smoldering Egg at the same time.
There's the Hall of Storm Giants activated. And that's going to draw a Power Word Kill. He's going to have to pay the 3 extra for the ward, but it's well worth the payment, as getting rid of Hall of Storm Giants means that this attack is clean. The egg can soak up damage from the Shade here.
Yeah, I wonder if you wanted to use a removal spell before blocks. Yep. And Sam clearly frustrated here.
Yeah, he's facing lethal, and he just finds another land. I mean, it's really tough because right when that critical juncture, there were 5 lands on top of the library there for Sam Pardee, and that means that Raphael Levy is going to pick up the win here.